Talk about Blaise Pascal. He's pronounced in different ways, a Frenchman back in the 17th century. Maybe you've recognized the name, but you'll probably recognize this quote. And I've heard this quote being quoted different ways. So I'm going to say it's a loosely quoted statement he made. And he said, "There is a God-shaped vacuum in the heart of each man, which cannot be satisfied by any created thing, but only by God the Creator, made known through Jesus Christ." And so that is a well-known quote. Again, I think there's been liberties taken with it. But from that quote, you may have heard the phrase, the God-shaped hole. That's used often in Christendom, and it's become accepted so much so that people over the years have asked me where in the Bible that is. And it's not anywhere in the Bible. The idea of this God-shaped hole, to my knowledge, stems back to this man's quote many centuries ago. It's a good quote. I think it's a valid point, too. I have no issues with it. But I bring it up because Pascal was a genius. He was a child prodigy. He was especially gifted in mathematics. He tended towards a little bit of philosophy. But he is, from what I can gather, the father of the modern calculator. He created a machine, a mathematic machine that would eventually evolve into what now we have as our calculators. And he was indeed one of our world's finest brains. But the tragedy of Mr. Pascal is, as gifted as he was, as smart as he was, he did not make it to the age of 40. He died at the age of 39. But yet in his brilliance, and even in his young age, he saw what few of us, despite it being very obvious, he saw what few of us ever see. And he made note of it, and I'm going to read his quote to you. It's not deep, it's not philosophical, but it is true. And way too many of us go through life and never acknowledge that. He said this, he said, "All men have happiness as their object. There are no exceptions. However different the means they employ, they aim at the same end. Everyone, without exception, is searching for happiness." Not deep, but true. Very true. So true that many people, even into their 40s and 50s and 60s, have never looked into the mirror and acknowledged that about themselves. And I think it's because we have, as a race and as individuals, we pursue happiness at such a micro level on every page of our lives. We pursue it desperately that we don't realize it on a macro level. Meaning, when you wake up in the morning, you begin unconsciously pursuing things that make you happy. And all throughout the day, you do that, whether with food, whether with drink, whether with cleaning, whether with relationships, whether with hobbies, whether with work. But we're always doing things that make us happy, and we do it at such a micro level, at the smallest part of life, that we don't realize in the macro level, my goodness, we are chasing happiness. Happiness is that bunny that we just keep watching go into a bush, and we go to look for it, and then he darts out to another bush, and we spend our lives literally from womb to tomb chasing and pursuing one simple and seemingly despicably simple thing called happiness. And it is true. There are no exceptions. None. None whatsoever. We all do it. Since the beginning, mankind has been on a desperate pursuit of happiness. And our nation's founders understood that, as evidenced by the second paragraph of the first article of the U.S. Constitution. It reads, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." They understood that without that happiness, we're a miserable species, and without that happiness, it's just going to be a terrible nation to live in, so we want to give you every right to go get what you've been looking for since you were born. And here we are, still desperately seeking happiness. At the heart of all of our choices, there is this mad hunger for happiness. And as I mentioned last week, that's not wrong. God understands why we seek happiness. He put that desire in us, and that was intended to draw us to Him, because everything in this world is lacking. It's wanting. It will not produce lasting happiness. And so as the Lord sees us go from fruit to fruit, from veggie to veggie, from meat to meat, from person to person, from experience to experience, from pill to pill, we realize nothing makes us happy. And the idea is we should be still longing for something we can't grab, something we can't see, something we can't touch. And that, of course, at the end of the day should be God. So as Pascal said, without a relationship with God through Jesus Christ, there is no true happiness. And I'm not going to spend time sharing that with you today. As I mentioned last week, come see me. We'll talk about it. I want to talk about after you find Christ, you now have the potential for happiness. But yet, too many Christians seemingly still go back to the bunny and the bush and spend the rest of their life having peace with God, but having really no peace in their soul because they don't have the happiness they long for. And I stand by with my statements last week, however harsh they may have sounded, however difficult they may have been to absorb, and I didn't say them, nor do I today, to offend anybody or to be insensitive to anyone going through hard times. But a miserable Christian, an unhappy Christian, is a contradiction. It's not right, and I don't say that from a moral standpoint, but it doesn't fit what we're told. Jesus Christ said, I am come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly. Now, if you ask Jesus in that moment, John chapter 10, when he said that, what do you mean by that? And you showed him a picture of a Christian with a frown on their face and anger in their eyes, do you think he'd say, yeah, that's precisely what I mean by giving somebody abundant life? Or would he paint the picture of a person with joy infused into their countenance, even in life's most bitter moments, even in life's darkest and most dismal times? You cannot erase the joy behind the tears. You cannot take the smile out of the frown. It is there when you find Christ and you find the Christ-like life. And so happiness is available for everyone. It's harder to get for those of us who may be sipping on the bitter taste of life. We didn't ask for it. The vending machine popped a can out and we had to drink it, and it hurts and it's painful, and you should weep and you should mourn and you should grieve, and you should never be thrilled about what has been done to you in this world or taken from you. But that doesn't need to nullify or void or remove the reality that happiness is available for everyone. And if you specifically today said, hey, I've been going to the vending machine for all my life, and yeah, once in a while I get one I don't like, but none of them have been bitter. None of them have been hard. I mean, the hardest thing in my life, I broke my arm maybe once, or my wife and I, or my husband and I, we had a rough 3 months, or my kid gave us a run for our money when he was a teenager. But if you've never tasted a can of just breakdown grief because of a tremendous loss, then ladies and gentlemen, I say this without apology, you and I have zero excuses to not experience the happiness that Christ offers. Zero. And I'm very excited to share with you the path to happiness. We started last week talking about it. You're in John chapter 13. Jesus is preparing his disciples for what will be that bitter can coming down the vending machine path. He is about to leave them, and he's not just going to leave them. He's not just leaving in the clouds. He's leaving them on a cross where he for hours will suffer. If you've never watched a loved one suffer, I will tell you the impact it has on your grief is substantial. I can't speak for all grief, of course, but as I work with widows and widowers and go through ministry and even in my own life, I will tell you when someone is suffering, it changes the dynamics of grief. Everyone's grief is unique, but there is something about suffering that just breaks your heart over and over, long after they're gone. And that's what these men are going to experience. They're going to see their Messiah, their Master, their Lord, the man who rescued them from just the ordinary lives that they were living and gave them something great to live for. He gave them eternal hope. And they're going to watch him suffer. They're going to watch one of their own betray him. They're going to look in the mirror and know that they forsook him. Peter is going to be aware that he denied him. And so they're going to experience tremendous grief, tremendous loss. It's going to be a bitter taste. And so Jesus is preparing them for the rest of their life. And he says, let's read verse number 1. We'll see what he says down in verse 17. Now, before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour was come, that he should depart out of this world unto the Father, having loved his own which were in the world, he loved them unto the end. And supper being ended, the devil having now put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he was come from God and went to God, he riseth from supper, and laid aside his garments, and took a towel, and girded himself. After that he poureth water into a basin, and began to wash the disciples' feet, and to wipe them with the towel wherewith he was girded. Can you hear the sound of that swishing of the water in the basin? Can you hear the rubbing of the feet? Can you sense the silence in that room where these men, humbled by the master serving, washing their dirty feet, just looking around in almost disbelief that he would do this, and looking at each other and looking down, and almost a sense of shame that he would do that for them? Jesus would be full of divine love, the kind that we talked about not too long ago. He was fully invested. There were no moanings. There were no groanings. There were no sighs. There were no getting through it, rushing through it just to have it done. No, this was precious. Jesus would have wrapped his hands around the heels of those 12 men, around the toes of those men, washed them perhaps with wet eyes, knowing he would be departing out of the world, and just reflecting on 3 years of finding them where they were and training them to be who they were, and watching them now go through the greatest trial of their lives, knowing Peter's going to deny him, and John's going to forsake him, and Judas, those 10 toes, those 2 heels, would betray him with a kiss. Can you go there? Can you imagine this? It's precious. He's all done with the 12th man. Look at verse number 12. So after he had washed their feet and had taken his garments and was set down again, he said unto them, Know ye not what I have done to you? You call me Master and Lord, and ye say, Well, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and Master, have washed your feet, ye also ought to wash one another's feet. I have given you an example that ye should do as I have done to you. Verily, verily, truly, truly, I say unto you, the servant is not greater than his Lord, neither he that sent greater than he that sent him. You think he had their attention at that point? Do you think he had their uncompromised gaze and their unmeddled ears? You think he had all 12 of them just thinking why, how, and then they're processing all of this, and then he says in verse 17, if you know these things, happy are ye if you do them. You know that rabbit? There it is. That rabbit that you and I chase throughout our life. It's the can of Pepsi. It's the TV show. It's the job. It's the girl. It's the guy. It's the car. It's the vacation. It's the fame. It's all the likes on social media. You know that rabbit we keep following? Jesus is saying, hey, that rabbit won't make you happy. If you know these things that I just did unto you, if you do these things I just did unto you, that's happiness. You know, the happiness you're going to need going through the next few hours and the next few days and for the rest of your life, the vending machine of life will drop can after can, whether it's the martyrdom of Stephen, whether it's the conflict of Paul, whether it's the great distress and persecution of the church, bitter cans will drop from that machine over and over and over. If you want happiness, it's not found in this world. It's found in a basin of water where you're washing the feet of one another. Outside of that, it's just a rabbit. Happiness isn't found in wealth. It's not found in health. It's not found in social acceptance. It's not found in relational affirmation. It's not found in accomplishment. It's not found in trophy. It's not found in award. It's not found in popularity. Happiness is found only in servitude. And by servitude, I don't mean the all right. I don't mean the fine pastor will sign up. I don't mean the kind of servitude where you do it to get your wife or your husband or your parents off your back. The kind of servitude that you, on your own, by your own, with nothing but sincerity and love, wrap your fingers around another man or woman's toes, and you love it. We had a ministry leaders banquet on Friday night. They don't know this, by the way. I told one man this afterwards. But we had a ministry leaders banquet to honor our ministry leaders, and Paul gave a great charge to us, and we fed them good and just tried to have a good time getting to know each other. What they didn't know, that I was very close to having, we had 35 present. I was going to have 17 basins of water. And I was going to say, all right, ladies, find a lady. Gentlemen, find a man. And just have a room of 35 people. I know there's a half in there, stop you mathematicians. But just have a room full of people just washing each other's feet because they wanted to. There's something satisfying in that. The bunny, the rabbit doesn't matter anymore. Humanity thinks happiness is found in being served, and Christianity says it's the exact opposite. I'm going to give you 7 essentials to get happiness. They're going to be based on what Jesus did. He's going to show us how to get it. You say, well, I know it. You wash somebody's feet. Yeah, but listen, after church, if you go home and wash your wife's feet or your husband's feet, that doesn't bring happiness. It's not the act, okay? It's what gets you there, sincerely, truly, and keeps you there. And that's what we're going to talk about. So if you're interested, pay attention. If not, you got to wait half an hour, and then we'll get you out of here. Essential number 1. If you want it, here we go. You have to have love for your own. You have to have love for your own. We read in verse 1 that Jesus, having loved his own which were in the world, he loved them unto the end. It starts here. Oh, my soul, without this, forget about it. Happiness does not exist outside of loving one another. And we've been talking about that this year. It's been our theme. We've used this passage to introduce that. But it is impossible to truly serve others without first loving them. Furthermore, it's impossible to sustain serving sinners without loving sinners. Because you're gonna come up to somebody and you're going to start washing their feet, and you know what they're going to say? You missed a spot. You know, if I was doing it, this is how I would do it. Or a week later, they're going to text you and say, I want a refund, because it didn't last. And if you don't love that sinner, you're just going to say, people stink. Why bother? Forget about it. Wash your feet yourself. That's what we're going to do. You see, love is what brings us to the table and keeps us at the table. There is no foot washing without soul loving. There's no way you can wash the dirtiest part of a person without loving the deepest part of their soul. There's just no way. It has to be founded in love. You'll never touch a man's toes if you don't love that man's soul. Ladies, you'll never touch a woman's toes if you don't first love that woman's soul. If you get nothing else, my soul, this is so important. This is absolutely undeniable. A lack of love for others will produce and sustain perpetual loathsomeness. You want to be unhappy for the rest of your life. I mean, it has nothing to do with making a pretty woman your wife. It's about just not loving people. If you don't love people, then life's terrible because it's full of billions of them. And God tells you to be immersed in a group of people every week, to not forsake the assembling of yourselves together. You know, it's been my observation that believers blame their misery on everything but their lack of love for others. There are people right now, right here, who are just miserable, right? We're going to have it in a group of it. Miserable, and they're miserable for everyone else's reasons. Or for reasons that everyone else, well, they did this and they did that, and they won't do this and they won't do that. And they're just miserable because of all these things. They never look in the mirror and they never say, you're the reason, you right there are the reason for my misery. We never do that, but that is the truth. Now, I have observed this for what it's worth. It's especially common for believers to lose their joy and shed their happiness as they age. And let me explain why. And it's a lesson for younger people to take note of. It's a lesson for older people to be aware of. But as we get older, we tend to lose our love for others. You say, why? Well, because our health deteriorates, and so we sit at home more than we sit in church. And the more you sit at home, the less you are going to serve people. But the more you sit at home, the bigger you and I become. We become the kings and queens of our world when we're the only one in it. Right? And so as we age, it's harder to get out. It's harder to do things. Naturally, because of age and those limitations, it's natural to do less for others and more for ourselves. As we age, it's natural to expect more from others to help us because we're aged, and do less for others and expect ourselves to do less for others because we're aged. The problem is with this natural progression, and no one should be faulted for naturally aging and not even being aware of that. I'm just bringing awareness to it. It's just unfortunately easy to serve less and less in time, and there is no way to separate service from happiness. You say, but I can't serve. You can serve in some capacity. Yeah, but what if I'm stuck in bed? You can still serve people by praying for them. You can still serve people by asking to have them over and talk with them and share with them some of your love and concern, your stories. You can still write cards perhaps. But anyways, what I'm saying is we have to adjust our service based on our age and ability. But the idea of us kind of retiring from serving, or it's somebody else's job, or I no longer can do that, or I no longer am able to do that. Well, yeah, you can't dig a ditch anymore, but you certainly can invest in a life. And the greatest people in this church that I have observed as they age are the ones who are not busy with things. They're the ones who are busy with people. We had a little sheet I handed out to all the ministry leaders, and I put on there, name one person who's been an inspiration to you in this church. And you know, one of the names that really struck out to me, I won't tell you who wrote it down, but she wrote down Judy Farmer. Judy Farmer, I don't know how old she is. I'm not allowed to ask how old ladies are, you know. I know she's not 30. She's gone through a tough time. But for my gatherings, for her entire life, she made people her business. She only resigned from Awana because her husband was in the hospital. And that woman had an impact on another woman. Why? Because she just didn't stop and hasn't stopped caring about people. She has a love for people that leads her to serve people. If you find yourself unhappy, don't blame your circumstances. Blame your service. If we find ourselves unhappy, don't blame others. Let's blame our lack of serving others. It's just that simple. It has to start with love, and we have to love them unto the end if we're going to serve others. If we don't serve others, we'll never be happy. Verse number 2, and supper being ended, the devil having now put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him. Verse 3, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands. Essential number 2, if you want to serve others, which will then bring happiness to you as a byproduct, not as the motivation, not as the goal, not as the reason, but if you want to be happy, you need to serve. And if you're going to serve, you have to love your own. And number 2, you have to have thoughts, literal, conscious, intentional thoughts of your eternal security. Let me explain. These two verses, I don't think were paired coincidentally for just some random reason. The fact that Satan now entered into the heart of Judas Iscariot to betray Jesus, and Jesus knowing that the Father had given all things into his hand. I don't think they're placed right next to each other just to get the story told. In fact, we didn't need to know about Satan being in Judas's heart to lead to betray Jesus. We could have just seen Jesus wash the feet of the apostles. The story was about Jesus washing the feet, not about Judas betraying Jesus. So why are they paired together except to point out that if you and I knew that Satan himself was impacting another person so much so that that person would betray us to our death, to our demise, wouldn't I be hesitant to wash that man's feet? If we knew that, okay, let's use Big Ben. Let's say Satan is just influencing Big Ben, and I knew it. I could see in this man a satanic look. I could see in this man just a demonic approach in the way he looked at me. And I could sense, and I went to God and said, God, what's wrong with Ben? And God says, that's because Satan's in his heart and he's going to betray you. Of all the men in this room, I would be the most fearful of him. I'd be hesitant to wash his feet. I'd be afraid he's just going to, plunk me on the noggin and that man could hurt me. I could be afraid that he would stab me in the back when I bow before him. You understand? So if you and I are going to serve people that, look risky, look scary, have the potential to hurt us, you're going to have some sense of security going into that foot washing. And Jesus said, yeah, I know Satan has influenced Judas, but the Father has given me all things. I have nothing to fear in Judas because I have nothing to fear in Satan. I have nothing to fear in anyone in this room. All 12 of you are nothing compared to me based on what God has given me. And so I have nothing to fear in you. With nothing to fear, gentlemen, sandals off, please. Why don't we serve people? Think about why we don't serve people. Why wouldn't you ask Big Ben, for example, to take off his shoes and socks and let you wash his feet? Fear of rejection. Right? We're usually very hesitant to ask somebody to do something for them because we don't want them to say, oh, no thanks. Because, they didn't like us. They didn't trust us. They didn't want us. So fear of rejection or fear of getting hurt, it might be vulnerable to take your robe off and show off that you're not as fit as you perceived, or they perceived. Jesus took his robe off. He kneeled down on the ground. He girded himself with a towel and began to wash the feet of Ben, in this case, Judas. And so it would be easy for Jesus to feel vulnerable. But he said, I'm thinking, knowing, not he realized, not he thought about, not he knew that doctrine. No, knowing in that moment, thinking intentionally that the Father hath given me all things. Jesus said, he's given all things to my hand. It's go time. I have all the power in the world. There isn't a demon. There isn't a person. There isn't anything that can hurt me. And so it makes me secure. And if it makes me secure, I now can serve others. And if I serve others, I'll find happiness at the end of that rainbow. Verse number 3 tells us Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands and that he was come from God. Write down number 3, essential thoughts of our divine nature. You need to have love for our own. We need to have thoughts of our eternal security, that in Christ we're complete. God has given us everything. Nothing can separate us from the love of Christ. Not death, not life, not angels, not principalities. We're secure in him. We don't need you to like us. We don't need you to want us. We don't need you to accept us. We got the love of God. So I don't need you to give me applaud. I've got it from God. Then you can go serve people. Then you have to think about who you are. Jesus, knowing in that moment, intentionally thinking that the Father had given all things into his hand and that he was come from God. He was of God. He sat at that table, looked at those guys. Yes, that guy would deny him 3 times. Yes, those guys would forsake him. Yes, that guy would betray him. And he could have sat there with his foreknowledge and thought, man, this is a bummer. I invested in these boys for 12 years or 3 years. I gave these guys powers and they're just going to walk away from me. This is depressing. That's not what he thought. He knew. He was knowing that he was of God. He said, I am the only begotten Son of God. He knows in that moment he came from God. It is not in my nature to sit here and be defeated. It is not in my nature to sit here and be fearful. It is not in my divine nature to be scared of the devil. It is not my nature to make a big deal out of people rejecting me. No. I came to give my life and to be a ransom for many because I am the sinless Son of God. I am God, and God doesn't quit, and God doesn't lay down. And God isn't defeated by anybody. What a thought. What a service-provoking thought. I mean, shouldn't we sit around and say, what's wrong with me? I have the nature of God in me. I was born again. I was given the nature of God. In my nature, I'm not wired to lose. I'm not wired to whine. I'm not wired to give up. I'm not wired to be defeated. I'm not wired to be selfish. I'm not wired to be fearful. This isn't God in me. This is me in me. And we should get our tushies out of our whining seats and onto the ground where we start washing the feet of other people. But if we're not thinking, if we're not knowing that in real time, we'll get overcome by the flesh and its insecurities and its own human nature. One more thing he thought about in verse 3. It says, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands and that he was come from God, and went to God. My favorite, essential number 4, we need to think about our expiration date. Jesus, in that moment, realizing, sensing, knowing that Satan was influencing Judas to betray Jesus, which would lead to his arrest, which would lead to his suffering, which would lead to his death, in that moment he said, it's time. The hour has come. He was aware of that, verse number 1. And so, knowing he had but hours left, what did he do? Knowing I had but little time to be with my guys, I'm not going to leave them and go sit in solitude and just reflect upon my life and maybe put my thumb in my mouth and wish people were nicer to me, wish things played out differently. No, he says, I'm running out of time. I'm running out of time to serve. I'm running out of time to teach others to serve. And ladies and gentlemen, everyone in this room, every one of us is running out of time. We're running out of time, yes, to meet those big lofty goals and to experience all of life, yes. We're running out of time to make all the wrongs right, yes, but we are running out of time to serve others. We are running out of time to wash the feet of our brothers and sisters. I often tell Tara, as I age, I worry about my ability and I worry about my composure and I worry like, am I going to lose it? And I tell her, I said, honey, I'll tell her, I don't know what list we're on. We're probably up to 5 or things. I'll say, honey, do not let me do this. Do not let me do that. You can kill me. You're allowed to kill me. I'll write a letter so the officials will know. But do not let me finish that way. And one thing I've said is, do not let me finish miserable. I think it is a tragedy if any saint descends into the ground with a frown on their face. I think it's a tragedy to finish this life, to go into the next life saddened or miserable or bitter about something in this world. No. We ought to finish this course, as Paul said, with joy. I don't want to expire and on my final day, people go, ugh. Which is what we do with milk when it spoils, which is why you can't spoil. You ever throw out something that expired, but you smell it, and it's good. And you taste it, and it's fine. And you just feel bad that you're throwing it out. That's the type of Christian I want to be. I want people, when they put me in the ground, say, he looked bad as far as his age, but he might have still been good. He had a smile on his face. That's what I want. I mean, if I have the luxury of being in hospice and I'm with it and I'm conscious, I'm telling you, and I want you all to hold me accountable, I want to have a massive smile on my face. I want to have a smile that even if it's not there, I want you to paint it with lipstick. I want you to paint me up like a clown. I want to get out of here just thrilled. Why? Because I should be. I get to go to heaven. I go from this life serving God to the next life serving God. What is it that we're so upset about that we can't be happy about? I'll tell you what. We're too busy serving ourselves. Too busy. Jesus, he came to die. It was at the front of his mind. He didn't push it back there and say, ooh, don't talk about that, guys. I'm real nervous about dying. That's why he came. So everything was calculated through this expiration date. He looked at the side of the carton and he knew, I've only got so much time. He flipped the bottle over and said, I only have so much time. Could it be that you and I in the modern world, where we have food and exercise equipment and doctors and insurance, could it be we're so consumed, so obsessed with living longer that we don't think about death? And because we don't think about death, we don't think about what time we have left. and we are going to live a life wasting opportunities. Could it be? I worry about that for sure. I am shocked how many of us are terrified of dying. Now, we shouldn't be excited to die. We shouldn't be looking forward to death and departure and the grief and all of that, but I am shocked how many Christians tell me, well, you know, if you keep eating that or if you keep doing that, you're going to, I'm going, what? Say it, right? Like, you mean die? What are you planning on doing? I fully admit you're going to look better than me when you die. I agree with that. I'm fine with that. And I'm not against you eating healthy. I think it's biblical. I think it's wise. Do it. Don't do it to live longer. Do it to be more useful. I'm all about that. How long do you want to be here? What's your expiration date? Have you looked at it recently? Well, say, I don't know what it is. Have you looked at it? Have you even thought about it? It's in the back of our heads, not the front of our heads. Jesus came to die. It was at the front of his heads. Cool? I know some of you are already upset with me because I mentioned food and stuff. Listen, if you're upset about that, and I'm not trying to step on your toes, but if you're upset about that, your happiness is founded in the wrong thing. That's a rabbit. That's a rabbit. Eat healthy. I'm all about it. Totally all about it. But don't chase it for happiness. Okay? We cool? We still friends? Verse number 4. I do have to move quick. I have 2 minutes to do 3 more points. Can we do it? No, but we'll try. Verse number 4. We read, He, Jesus, riseth from supper. Now, the 5th thing, you can write it down, but let me explain what we're going to do for these next 3 things, and I'll do fast as I can. The 5th thing is we have to have power over our pleasures. And the next 2 are going to be power over something else. But I want you to see what I didn't realize was happening as I was studying this. But Paul, in 1 Timothy chapter 1, he tells Timothy to snap out of it. He was just struggling with some things. And he says to him, hey, God hath not given us the spirit of fear. He said, but he's given us the spirit of power, of love, and a sound mind, is what he said. Those are the things that project us to serve, project us to get busy for the Lord. Well, we already know the essential number 1 started with love. That's the spirit of love that we see in that verse. Then we saw the spirit of a sound mind, thoughts of our eternal security, thoughts of our expiration date, that's sound, thoughts of our divine nature. You've got to have a heart for service that comes from God, the divine nature. You have to have the mind of Christ to serve, otherwise you'll be afraid to serve. And now we're going to talk about the spirit of power. You've got to bridle some things, otherwise the love and the sound mind will get trapped in a bottle of laziness. Okay, so number 5, if you want to get to a place where you're truly serving, that will produce the happiness you and I search, you've got to have power over your pleasures. How many of you would admit to me that one of the hardest things in life is to sit down after whatever, a long day of work or just a few hours of work, but you sit down to have supper, and after you eat, have you noticed that whatever happens in your belly impacts your legs and your feet? Like whatever ambition you had before dinner, where does it go when you eat, right? After we eat, I'm going to do this, this, and that, and you eat, and you're just like, wow, I'm going to do nothing. Right? It's just food just drains us, and we just become uninterested in doing anything. Jesus, after he ate, the wording is a beautiful picture. Instead of resting, he rose. Instead of sitting, he served. Instead of giving in to the pleasures of life and to the human body's appetite for rest and laziness, he got up and he did some things that would produce, well, meaning in the lives of others and ultimately in the lives of all of us today. We don't serve others for a couple of reasons. We don't serve others because we don't love them. We don't serve others because we don't think about the right things, but some of you do, and some of us do love and think about the right things, but we can't keep this body down. So many good intentions to serve our wives. So many good intentions to serve our husbands. So many good intentions with true love and with real purpose to serve brothers and sisters get wasted and lost in a sea of laziness and slothfulness. I have 2 daughters, and I don't know who's going to marry them. Jury's out. Highest bidders available. No, there are 2 things. There's a lot of things I'd love to see God give my daughters. It's whatever He wants. They're both here, so I know they're embarrassed. I apologize, girls. There's 2 things that I don't want in a son-in-law. One is lying, and the other is laziness. A lot of other things you can work with. Those really hurt a marriage. He can mean well. He can think straight. But if he can't take those feelings and those thoughts and get them out of the chair, they're useless. They're useless. Would it be fair to admit we're no different in here? Pastor says, the preacher says, the deacon says, the announcements go, hey, we need workers. Yeah, I'm going to do that. And never get there. Why? Well, because it's just easier to sit than to serve. It's just easier to sit in the pew than to serve the infants and toddlers where you might get dirty. It's easy to sit and, well, just do nothing than it is to study and teach the teens and the kids. It's easy to stay at home and not get dressed than to come and serve the congregation. It's easy to stay in bed rather than to get out and get dressed and come serve our fellow believers. It's just easier to enjoy the pleasures of the world than to get up and serve. But I will tell you, the happiness of watching a Bills game doesn't compare to the happiness of serving in the body of Christ. The happiness of sleeping, and I'm happy when I sleep. It doesn't compare to the happiness of serving the body of Christ. There is happiness in the lazy bear. There is a bunny there, a lazy boy. There is a bunny there, but it's not the type of happiness that comes from praying with another saint on Wednesday night. There is happiness in a lot of things, like soaking up the sun. But I'll tell you that happiness doesn't compare to the happiness of visiting a sick saint. I don't know if anyone's ever regretted going to church. But I can tell you there are millions who regret not going to church. Missed opportunity. Verse number 4, he riseth from supper and laid aside his garments. Write down number 6, power over our possessions. We have to have love for our own. We have to have thoughts about our eternal security, thoughts of our divine nature, thoughts of our expiration date. We've got to have power over the pleasures of this world, but we have to have power over our possessions. The picture here is beautiful. Stay with me. But we see that Jesus, he gets out of the seat. He's got enough strength. He's got enough discipline. He's got enough focus. He put his flesh down. He got up when it wants to stay down, and he takes his garments off and he lays them aside. That is a picture of taking off what you own and setting it aside for a moment. He's not giving it away. He's not burning it. He's not, selling all of his possessions, but he's taking it off for a while because he realizes if I'm going to wash the feet of these guys, I can't be wearing this big robe. It's going to get in the way. As I bow down, it's going to get into the water. It's going to make it very difficult. So I've got to take off my robe. I've got to set it aside if I'm going to effectively serve these men. And the picture is clear. You and I, as long as we find what we think is happiness in our stuff, in our things, in money, in mammon, it's just going to be cumbersome. It's going to be difficult to wash the feet of one another. The practical application is this. If you're so consumed with making money that you have to work excessive hours to get lots of money, to have excessive amounts of it so that you can have financial security both now and forever, it's just going to be hard to serve. You can do it. It's just going to be hard. You're just going to have this robe that keeps getting in the way. You're going to think, well, why are they spending money on that? And why are they doing this? And it's just constantly going to be on your mind. And that robe's going to be always in your head to where everything's about getting something, to the point where you start calculating how much money you're losing by not working when you're serving. When you get to the point where like, well, I'll give up 3 hours of overtime to serve somebody over here, but boy, that is me giving up a lot of money. If your mind even goes there, you don't have power over your possessions, they have power over you. Jesus didn't care about his garment. He needed it when it got cold later that night. He needed it to be appropriate and proper in public, but in that moment of serving, it meant nothing to him. And nor should our possessions. People who can't lay aside their garments or who try to serve with their garments typically are very unhappy people. Number 7, we need to have power over our pride. We read in verse number 4, he riseth from supper. That's power over the pleasures of this flesh. He laid aside his garments. That's power over the possessions. And he took a towel, and then see the wording, the imagery, and girded himself. Girded himself. What does that mean? That means you're binding something to you. You're wrapping it around you. You're tying it to you. You're making it a part of you. This towel was the servant's towel. This towel was not the master's towel. This wasn't the king's towel. Kings don't wash feet. Lords don't wash feet. Masters don't wash feet. That's for servants. But he took a servant towel after laying aside his possessions, and he girded himself. He bound himself. He became something he wasn't. He was committed to that for that time frame to do something he wasn't designed to do. When you gird yourself, you restrain yourself. And the application, while very pointed and very particular for us today, is so important. This is the picture of losing your individuality and to a great extent, losing your liberty. Becoming someone you're not. To do something you weren't designed to do for the sole purpose of washing somebody else's feet. Well, how do we apply that to us today, Pastor? We're not laying aside our sport coats and taking a towel and washing the feet of Big Ben in the front row, but you know, the 2024 towels are a little different. The 2024 towels, they may simply be submitting to somebody over you in some level of hierarchy. Well, I shouldn't have to answer anybody. You're right, you shouldn't. But to serve in a particular capacity, you might have to. Are you willing to do that? Well, no one's going to tell me what to do, and I'm going to do it my way. That's fine. But you'll never serve. And if you don't serve, you'll never be happy. Which is why the people who kind of put their foot down and their fist up and raise certain colored flags, they tend to be the most miserable people in the world. Because they know better than everybody and nobody's going to tell them what to do. And bless God, it's America, you know. What does that mean? Last I checked, Christ said, deny yourself. Take up your cross and follow me. Yeah, well, I have thoughts too. You're allowed to, but what good are they? We're supposed to be serving Christ, not ourselves. You know, some Christians, they just won't serve in certain ministries. And I don't want to list reasons why, lest you think I'm picking on anybody. I'm not. I'm trying to help you. I want you to be happy. I want you to get the happiness that Jesus promised in John 13:17. But you cannot get that happiness if you're not serving. And you cannot serve if you don't first love the people you're serving. If you don't think about your eternal security. If you don't think about your divine nature. If you don't think about your expiration date. If you can't put aside your possessions, your pleasures. And if you can't put aside your pride, you may still fit in some capacity of service, but it won't be true because the whole time you're doing it, you're like, I would do it this way, and I don't like that how that's done, and then it's about you, isn't it? Well, easy for you to say, Pastor, you're the pastor. You get to have the final say. May I be totally blunt with you? You're right, but do you want that responsibility? You can have it. I have to stand before the Lord Jesus Christ and answer for my decisions for this church. Not you. And be glad for that. Because guess who's going to make bad decisions? And guess who has the answer for those bad decisions? I'm asking you, maybe take a towel, gird yourself, and say, I didn't make this towel. I don't like how long it is. I don't like the color of it. I don't like the feel of it. I don't like that I have to do it, but I realize if I'm going to wash somebody's feet, I got to gird myself with a towel, and you know what? I love these people. I'm secure in Christ. I don't need to be right. My nature is to serve, not to complain. I have an expiration date. I better start serving. I'm not going to let my flesh get in the way, nor am I going to let my possessions get in the way. And God help me if I ever let my pride keep me and prevent me from serving others joyfully, purely, and forever. Otherwise, the white rabbit of liberty, the white rabbit of individuality, the white rabbit of I'm smarter than everyone else, the white rabbit of I want to do it my way, Frank Sinatra. I mean, that white rabbit seems really appealing. You'll never catch him. Never. He's just too swirly. Would you stand with me? I want to give you one more quote. I know we finished on a touchy side of it. We need that. We need that in our country. We've been deceived into thinking liberty is more important than humility. But I want to give you a quote, and I want you to think about it, and then we'll get you out of here. I appreciate your patience. I won't be preaching tonight, so come back. It will be done by the top of the hour. But here it is. Ready? Think about this. Think about it. Ready? The greatest happiness is to know the source of unhappiness. Ready? The greatest happiness is to know the source of unhappiness. Why are we unhappy? You figure that out? Then John 13 makes a lot of sense. It's available. We could all be happy for the rest of our lives.